Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Miuch and you are watching A News. Here are the headlines. The European Commission proposes major projects to counter drones and secure eastern border. French Prime Minister survives 2 no-confidence votes. Donald Trump announces another meeting with Vladimir Putin in Budapest. Thank you for tuning in. The European Commission has proposed 4 European flagship defense projects, including a counter-drone system and a plan to fortify the eastern border as part of a drive to boost defenses by the end of the decade. Speaking on the plans, EU's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas said it's clear Europe needs to toughen its defenses against Russia, adding the danger will not disappear even when the war in Ukraine ends. 2 of the proposals concerning the so-called drone wall and the fortification of EU's eastern borders are slated to have initial capacity by the end of next year. The proposals are subject to the approval of the EU 27. In Europe, talk of a drone wall is turning into one of the continent's most ambitious defense projects in decades. The idea gained ground after a Russian drone incursion into Polish airspace last month, an incident that exposed just how vulnerable Europe could be to UAV threats.
Europe is planning a high-tech drone wall, a new defense system designed to protect the continent from low-cost but dangerous drone attacks. The idea became urgent after more than 20 Russian drones entered Poland last month, shutting airports and forcing NATO jets to scramble. Warsaw says the attack was deliberate, showing that Europe's skies are vulnerable to modern drone warfare. So, what is the drone wall? It's not a physical barrier, but a network of technology. Radars to detect drones, jammers to disrupt them, interceptor drones to stop them, missiles for high-risk targets, and electronic systems to track threats in real time. All these layers will work together 24/7, creating a shield that can respond quickly to drones before they reach cities, airports, or critical infrastructure.
The drone wall is, of course, in its early stages, but the Baltic states are very keen on this, so stretching down through the Baltics, Poland, Germany is also within range of a lot of these Russian drones, and it's about integrating all of your air defense assets to work together in tandem, from ground radars, fighter jets, cheap interceptor drones, missiles, the whole range of capabilities and electronic warfare to jam these drones, all working in tandem around the clock. It's quite a challenge.
Europe wants the drone wall to be fully operational by 2027. It's part of a bigger project called the Eastern Flank Watch, which also includes an air defense shield and a defense space shield. The aim is to give Europe more control over its own security, especially as NATO and US support is no longer guaranteed. The project started with the Baltic and Nordic countries, but recent incursions in Denmark and Germany have pushed the EU to create a network covering the whole continent. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says the plan is timely and necessary, warning that Europe cannot keep spending millions of euros shooting down drones that cost only a few $1,000s each.
The big challenge for the drone wall is to shoot these drones down or take them down with electronic warfare in a cost-effective way. You just can't be firing hundreds or even thousands of $1 million or $500,000 missiles at these drones that generally cost about $50,000 each. It's hard to put a firm price on these things. It's always changing, but that would not be sustainable from an industrial-based perspective or a cost perspective. That would be the Russians imposing a huge cost on us. So the challenge is to get the technologies, cheap interceptor drones, get the costs down.
If successful, the drone wall will stretch from the Baltic to the Black Sea, forming a layered shield across Europe's eastern flank. It could protect airports, energy sites, cities and military bases. showing that Europe is ready to face the new realities of modern warfare.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said the alliance plans to step up and accelerate its efforts to strengthen counter-drone capabilities following a meeting of defense ministers in Brussels. Rutte stressed that NATO and the European Union are working closely together with no overlap in their activities. The ministers also discussed ways to enhance support for Ukraine and to bolster border defense amid the growing number of Russian drone incursions across Europe.
Also discussed our deterrence and defense posture and some of the ways in which we are innovating to deal with new and novel challenges, including those posed by drones. As a result, NATO will implement a number of additional counter-drone measures that will build on and expand and accelerate our ability to counter drones. Earlier this month, 9 allies came together along with Ukraine to support Denmark's ability to counter potential drone threats. I think this is a powerful example of the quick and effective cooperation that is made possible through NATO. As we speak, in the context of Eastern Sentry, we are testing integrated systems that will help us detect, track and neutralize aerial threats. Innovation and adaptation are in this alliance's DNA. In this vein, we will continue to learn from and cooperate with Ukraine, speed up our own innovation, deepen cooperation with the private sector.
US President Donald Trump said he will meet his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Budapest following their 2-hour phone call, during which Trump says great progress was made. The date has not been set yet, but the two agreed that high-level staff will meet next week. The call came ahead of Trump's meeting with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday as he considers Kyiv's push for long-range missiles. Zelensky has been pressing Trump to sell Kyiv Tomahawk missiles that would allow Ukraine to strike deeper into Russian territory. The US president told reporters on Sunday that he had planned to discuss the Tomahawks with Putin as a way to pressure him to end Russia's war in Ukraine. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said he would call for the European Union to use frozen Russian assets to back a 140 billion euro loan for Ukraine to finance its war effort at the upcoming EU summit. He made the announcement during an address to the Bundestag. Merz first proposed an interest-free EU loan backed by these assets in September. In the government declaration, he also addressed developments in the Middle East, European defense, competitiveness and migration. Britain is tightening its sanctions on Russia, this time hitting major oil firms and tankers linked to Moscow's war funding. Officials say the move is meant to increase pressure on Moscow and limit its ability to sustain the war in Ukraine. Our Zeynep Farajzadeh has the details.
Britain has announced a fresh wave of sanctions against Russia, this time targeting two of its biggest oil giants, Lukoil and Rosneft, as well as dozens of tankers in Moscow's so-called shadow fleet. The UK government says the measures are part of efforts to tighten energy sanctions and choke off the Kremlin's war revenues. Both Lukoil and Rosneft have been placed under Britain's Russia sanctions laws for what officials describe as their role in supporting the Russian government. The companies now face asset freezes, director bans, transport restrictions, and a prohibition on British trust services. London says the two firms are strategically important to the Kremlin and play a key role in generating state income that helps fund the war in Ukraine. The new package also targets 51 ships, including 44 tankers, identified as part of the shadow fleet, as well as several individuals and entities across the energy and defense sectors. But London has made one notable exception. Energy projects in Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan that involve Russian oil firms are now exempt from these sanctions. The government says their aim is to protect international partnerships and ensure energy stability in the Caspian region. Finance Minister Rachel Reeves said there is no place for Russia in global markets, adding that Britain will take every possible step to stop Moscow from financing its war. She also warned that the UK is stepping up pressure on companies in other countries such as India and China that continue to handle Russian oil. Russia's embassy in London dismissed the measures, warning they would backfire by destabilizing global energy markets and raising costs for British businesses and consumers. Rosneft is Russia's largest oil producer, responsible for around 40% of the country's total output, while Lukoil ranks second and has the broadest international presence. The UK government says the sanctions could restrict access to shipping and insurance services for Russian oil, which is still being moved through British-linked firms. But traders say the move may push more of Russia's exports into the Shadow Fleet, a network of over 1,500 vessels using non-Western insurance and opaque ownership structures to evade sanctions. Western allies, including the US and the EU, have increasingly targeting this fleet since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Zeina Ferarzadeh, A-News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
All major Chinese airlines operating flights to the United States have formally opposed or asked for reconsideration of a U.S. government proposal that could bar them from flying over Russian airspace on U.S. routes as early as next month. For more on that, we go to Beijing and our Mahnur Makhdoom.
Chinese airlines have formally opposed a U.S. Department of Transportation proposal that would prohibit them from flying over Russian airspace on routes between the United States and China, arguing that the move would significantly disrupt travel, raise flight costs, and unfairly penalize Chinese carriers. The DOT's plan, which was announced earlier this month, aims to address what it calls competitive disparity between American and Chinese airlines, as U.S. carriers have been barred from flying over Russian airspace since 2022, while Chinese airlines continue to benefit from shorter and cheaper flight paths. In submission to the DOT, major Chinese airlines including Air China, China Eastern, China Southern, and Hainan Airlines called the proposal unreasonable and warned that it would add hours to flight times, increase fuel consumption, and raise airfares. They also argued that rerouting would disrupt thousands of existing bookings and hinder people-to-people exchanges between the two countries. The U.S. government maintains that the restriction is necessary to restore fair competition under the U.S.-China Air Service Agreement, which stipulates equal access to routing options. American airlines have long complained that their inability to traverse Russian territory forces them to operate longer and less efficient routes, placing them at a commercial disadvantage. Manu Makhdoom, A-News, Beijing.
Over in France, Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has survived 2 no-confidence votes. Lecornu won the first motion by 18 votes and survived the second by a wider margin. Even though this is good news for the Prime Minister and the President, Emmanuel Macron, Lecornu is still on fragile ground, with the aim to get a 2026 budget through Parliament before the end of the year. Let's now go live to Arnhem and our Anita Sharma, who has the latest on the no-confidence votes in Europe's second largest economy. Hi, Anita. Lecornu's government survived both votes. Can you walk us through how it happened and what comes next? Oh, I'm being told we are having some connection issues. Let's go first. Oh, we have our Anita Sharma. Anita, hi. Can you walk us
Andy,
through...
good to see you.
It's always a pleasure to see you. Can you please walk us through how the day unfolded in the National Assembly and what comes next?
Well, much like this connection, Andy, it's a very precarious, fragile situation. France is just a gong show right now, but I will walk you through what happened today in Paris. So the Prime Minister, Sébastien Lecornu, he essentially survived very narrowly two no confidence motions in the National Assembly. The first motion was filed by the far left party La France Insoumise, or LFI. They obtained 271 votes, which was 18 votes shy of the majority that they needed to boot out the Lecornu government. The second motion fared a lot worse, Andy. That one was presented by the far-right National Rally Party. They only received 144 votes. So for now, and that's the critical term, for now, Lecornu's government, and by extension the Macron government, are safe, but it's a very fragile situation. The Socialist Party is what is keeping Lecornu and Macron in power. They abstained from the motions, both on the far left and the far right. Of course, they are on the left. What they said, for now, we're going to abstain. We're going to stand back so that we can push through a lot of the critical measures that we feel are important for the country of France. And that essentially is temporarily, but we don't know for how long, paralyzing the Lecornu government. Lecornu's survival now depends on this fragile safety net from parties that are not directly in the government, but willing to keep him in power, albeit for a short time. One more thing I want to mention, Andy, before we get to our next question, and that is the passage of the 2026 budget. It is due by year end. So all eyes are on Lecornu to see how he manages this delicate dance of trying to negotiate in this deeply fragmented assembly, this National Assembly. I have to point out to you, he promised not to invoke Article 49.3. That's a constitutional tool that would essentially force through legislation without requiring a parliamentary vote. Of course, we know that this is what the Macron government would want, so they could push through their austerity measures. But the Socialist Party said, sorry, folks, that's not going to happen. We want to see a debate. We want to see democracy in action before any legislation is passed through. So that's going to make it very tough, if it isn't already, for the Macron government, for the Lecornu government to move forward. With no guaranteed majority here, Andy, each vote is precious. Each vote is precarious. So it's a very delicate dance that Lecornu is engaged in right now.
Anita, you mentioned a safety net that Lecornu's government got from some of the opposition. What are some of their key demands?
Oh, Andy, the biggest one by far, and they've won, at least for now on this, is the suspension or the rollback of Macron's flagship 2023 pension reform. This is what Macron was elected upon. He said he would come in and really tighten the budget in France, in Paris, to make sure that France could get back on track. Well, pretty much all of the parties, saving except for the far right, said we are not going to entertain any notion of any change to pension reform. So they shot that down, and that's really seen as a big loss for the Macron government. What he was trying to do was raise the retirement age from 62 to 64, which is already seen as low across the EU, but he couldn't even push that through. It was a central demand, and Lecornu's concession here, if you will, mothballing this pension reform, suspending it till after the 2027 election, has helped him for now win the support of the Socialist Party. But like I said, it's going to be a very dangerous time for his government moving forward. So he promises not to use Article 49.3. The Socialist Party, the far left, wins with that for now. But the socialists have also promised to work on a so-called wealth tax, Andy. That's the Zucman tax, a professor from Paris University who essentially wants the wealthy to pay more. Of course, the Macron government is not behind this, but we're going to have to see just how many options they really have moving forward if they want to keep this contentious dance moving and keeping them in power. Andy, I leave you with this. The last thing that Macron wants is a snap election. I'll tell you, that is what the far right does want, because judging by the snap elections of last year, in 2024, that paved the way for the far right to move forward, and they smelled blood. They saw that with that snap election, they were moving ahead, they were gaining power. They're hot on the heels of Macron, something he doesn't want if in fact he is forced to call another election. So let's see.
Thanks a lot, Anita. Until next time.
All right, thanks, Andy. Good to see you.
Now let's go to Brussels and political analyst Gregory Mathieu to talk on the French government's survival and what comes next. Gregory, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Lecornu managed to secure a narrow backing and survive dual no confidence votes. What comes now is perhaps even a greater challenge, pushing a budget for 2026 through the very divided parliament by the end of the year. How good are his chances to do so?
Well, the chances are, in my opinion, limited, because it seems that, as the previous intervenant explained, that the Socialist Party is, in fact, having the Damocles sword in his hands. And President of Socialist Party can behead, and you know it's a sport in France to behead the leaders. He can behead the Prime Minister as soon as the budget will not represent his willingness. For example, she mentioned the Zuckman tax. Well, there will be not a lot of support for this tax in the right-wing party, and certainly not in the government party side. So I think now that the Socialist Party will raise the stakes permanently until they find a moment where they would say, now it's enough, we cannot support this budget anymore, and we are calling for a censoring of the government. So in a nutshell, maybe this government has won 2-3 weeks, months of duration, but ultimately the political opinion is very, very, very fragmented nowadays in France.
When it comes to their next push for this special tax on the wealthiest, do you expect the socialists to pull out the rug underneath Lecornu if they don't get that as well?
That or something else. But apparently they have now the power to decide what is good or not. The Zuckman tax, I have no opinion on that. But this kind of tax on the wealthy people can only work if it's implemented internationally. The risk if that such a tax happens, the very rich people, they will move away from France. And they will go to Belgium, they will go to Netherlands, they will go to Dubai, wherever. But this is not a tax that would, in fact, compensate the loss of the budget. So the budget that is now tabled will not gather the approval of the right wing, and everything, as I said, is in fact concealed in the hands of the Socialist Party, which has a lot of power now, despite the fact that in the last presidential election, their candidate gathered no more than 2.5% of the vote.
Well, Lecornu promised not to use the special constitutional power to push the budget through without the lawmakers. What kind of a debate on the budget might we expect in the National Assembly given the hung parliament, and how long do you expect it to take before the vote itself?
This tool, in fact, was used by the Prime Minister Borne to impose the reformed pension system. And nowadays, and I think it's a very good movement of Prime Minister Lecornu to take it out of the table and to govern and to give to the Parliament more power. Now, when, it depends on the goodwill of each and everybody. There is a so-called now stability platform. You in Azerbaijan, you have a lot of experience in platform. But I hope for you that your platform are much more stable than the one that is going to govern France in the next coming weeks and months.
Well, Gregory, thank you very much for joining us and providing us with your insight.
You're welcome, Andrew.
Let's turn to the Middle East. The fragile ceasefire in Gaza continues to hold as Israel and Hamas trade blame over violations of the U.S. brokered truce. With Hamas saying it has handed over all bodies of deceased hostages it could recover, families in Tel Aviv gathered for a quiet protest. For more on that and other developments on the ground, we go to our Lou Brown.
We're here in Dizengoff Square in the heart of Tel Aviv. Now, as you can just see here, people are congregating in a quiet protest. This has been going on all across the country once or twice a week as an alternative form of protest to raise awareness for the hostages and the now deceased hostages that have not yet been released by Hamas. Now, people here are using this form of protest as an alternative form to the common memes on the street. Now, they are here to offer support to each other. There are many families here who are affected by October 7th, many who have had their children not yet returned, their sisters, their brothers. We will be speaking to them a little bit later. Let's take a look at how people now have been interacting with each other. You know, it's quite community feel, it's very quiet. This started at 6 p.m. local time. People are offering insights, chatting. Many people aren't even having a chat with anyone, but rather just taking a moment to reflect. Now, we will be interviewing many people here a bit later, and if we have the opportunity, we're just going to come back to the square, well, the circular fountain here, where is littered with images of the victims of October 7th, and among them there are lots of flowers, lots of candles, tributes, many of whom have their families come and visit regularly, some of whom are here as well, and the deceased bodies that have not yet been returned to Hamas, by Hamas, as I say, are represented here as well. So a moment of reflection, a moment that's been very poignant during this war as people wait for closure. And like I say, the people here for this quiet protest do consider that closure not yet complete, and it's not complete to them until all the hostages are returned to Israel. Now, when we report on the ceasefire, we will say that Israel has said that Hamas has not returned more than a dozen bodies to Israel as of yet, and that is quite a sticking point in the ceasefire as well. Hamas says they need specialist equipment to return them and that it cannot extract them as of yet. Israel says that's a violation. Hamas, US officials are saying Hamas are working in good faith but cannot reach them at this moment in time. Now, people here are about to just start, but we will talk a little bit about the Rafah crossing as well. That border is still not open, and aid has still not entered. There were 300 commercial trucks that entered today, but those were not aid. And like I say, aid is the most important to come in, because many people in Gaza do not have financial access to get those commercial means that are coming in. So we will keep you up to date on that, as Tom Fletcher has urged that more aid is needed. He's the UN chief, and he's urged that to come in as soon as possible. Now, this is just about to get going. We will be speaking to many people here, and that will be covered throughout this evening. This is usually held in Jerusalem. Quite important to note that this is in Tel Aviv, which isn't always the host of the quiet protest. And many people here. There are stickers being handed out. I'm certain that that will be a reason to chat to people and identify people, who they are and what their relevance is to the families. Now, I want to tell you that this will be the final day of reporting in Israel by A News. Lou Brown.
Tens of thousands of Gazans with serious injuries and diseases are waiting for medical evacuation as the Rafah crossing to Egypt is yet to reopen. There is no exact date set, but Israeli Foreign Minister was quoted by Italian media as saying that the crossing will probably be reopened on Sunday.
After months of war and blockade, families in Gaza are clinging to hope that the reopening of the Rafah border crossing will finally bring life-saving medical help. 18-year-old Hassan was shot in the head more than 2 months ago while searching for food. The injury caused a brain hemorrhage, forcing doctors to remove part of his skull.
If the crossing doesn't open and he can't go abroad for treatment, Hassan, a young man in the prime of his youth, 18 years old, I'll lose him. Hassan, for 18 years I have raised him, run after him, fed him, and given him drink, done everything so he could grow up. But now, as you can see, his condition, Hassan needs treatment outside. If he doesn't get out for treatment, I'll lose him completely.
According to the World Health Organization, Hassan is one of 15,600 Gazans waiting for medical evacuation, including 3,800 children. Many are war-injured, while others suffer from cancer and heart disease amid Gaza's collapsing health system. Israeli officials said the Rafah crossing, used for patient transfers through Egypt, will reopen soon.
I am waiting for the Rafah border crossing to open. I've been holding a medical referral for more than a year, with this referral. I was injured in the war on May 11th, and until now, I've been in the hospital waiting for the Rafah crossing to open. My condition is actually getting worse every day.
World Health Organization said hundreds have already died waiting, including 740 people and 137 children since July.
For now, I'm waiting for the crossings to open according to the referral. I'm working on a referral for my son. His tendons are torn and his nerve is severed. And 2, he has an amputation in his left leg. God willing, the crossings will open.
Since the conflict began, over 7,000 patients have been evacuated, with Egypt taking more than half. Transfers slowed sharply after Rafah was shut in May last year when Israel took control. Since March, fewer than 4 patients a day have been allowed to leave, a rate that would take over 10 years to clear the waiting list, WHO data shows.
Iran says that the members of the non-aligned movement have rejected the reimposition of UN sanctions on Tehran over its nuclear program. Iranian foreign minister was at the movement's ministerial meeting in Uganda, where he made the case. Our Turashir Alilu has the details.
The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi appealed to the non-aligned movement for defying the reimposition of nuclear sanctions supported by US and 3 European powers in order to show the unity and independence of the movement. Speaking at the ministerial meeting of the non-aligned movement in Kampala, Uganda, he called on the member countries to refrain from participating in the US E3 plan against Iran, which he said was carried out for the purpose of gaining political advantage and violating international law. He said from Iran's perspective, which is shared by a number of permanent and non-permanent members of the Security Council, the Resolution 2231 expires on October 18th, and its reinstallment is solely a means of political blackmail. Also last week, in a meeting with the Tehran-based foreign ambassadors, he urged their respective governments and the UN Secretariat to consider that all restrictions in the resolution will terminate in accordance with its provisions. Iran strongly reacted to the vote on return of pre-2015 nuclear sanctions in September. Araghchi wrote letters to UN Chief and Security Council, as well as his counterparts, stressing that Tehran will continue to uphold its sovereign rights and legitimate interests. The Foreign Ministry also issued a statement saying that Resolution 2231 shall expire on October 18th as stipulated, because about half of Security Council members, 6 out of 15, did not vote for return of sanctions. Araghchi arrived in Kampala on Wednesday and has met counterparts from NAM countries, besides taking part in the ministerial meeting, which discusses the theme deepening cooperation for shared global affluence for 2 days. Established in 1961 in Bandung at the height of the Cold War geopolitical rivalry, the non-aligned movement is an alliance of 121 developing countries. دکتر شیرالیلو، تهران، A News TV.
Search and rescue teams from Turkey's Disaster Management Authority departed for Gaza as part of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. According to a senior official, Ankara will take part in a joint task force with Israel, the US, Qatar, and Egypt, with the goal of finding the bodies of deceased Israeli hostages in Gaza. As Turkey has confirmed it's ready to join the Gaza task force, talks are reportedly underway on which countries will contribute troops to the international stabilization force that would enter the Strip, according to the US brokered peace plan. Reuters carried a quote from an unnamed senior US advisor who said Washington is talking with Indonesia, the UAE, Egypt, Qatar, and Azerbaijan. Politico writes that Indonesia, Pakistan, and Azerbaijan are top contenders to supply troops. Joining us now to talk on the international force and the talks with different countries set to join it is Sheraz Mahmoud, research scholar at the Western Caspian University in Baku. Welcome, Sheraz. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, there are a few reports on which countries might contribute troops, and both of them list Azerbaijan. Given Baku's role in the Middle East and with its recent engagements in Syria, what would Azerbaijan's presence in the stabilization force signify?
You know, Azerbaijan is basically it's kind of a force which can stabilize very significantly in the Middle East, because it has emerged as a very significant military power in the region. It has come into a league of a very significant middle power in the region. And with solidarity, Azerbaijan being a neutral state, on one side it has very good relations with Israel, and on the other side it actually supports Palestine at the same time as well. Being a neutral state, Azerbaijan steadfast in the OIC category with Palestine as well. So Azerbaijan, it would be a new experience for Azerbaijan to make a peacekeeping, to act as a peacekeeping military. But Azerbaijan, being a Muslim state, can integrate into the culture very easily, and they have already have a lot of historic ties and obviously cultural ties, and so it would be very significant for Azerbaijan, and it would be a very good experience for Azerbaijan to integrate into it. And I think Azerbaijan is a very good choice.
Well, as these negotiations with different countries are still ongoing, given all the stages and points of the U.S. brokered peace plan, how long would you say it will take for the stabilizing force to have boots on the ground?
There's a coalition of Azerbaijan, Pakistan is obviously is under consideration, and that would take a little time, maybe 3 months down the line or something. But but obviously Azerbaijan, I have talked about Azerbaijan, but Pakistan already has a very good experience of peacekeeping, because in Pakistan back in 90s and all that, it worked for peacekeeping in a lot of other countries with the United Nations and all that. So Pakistan being already an experienced country in peacekeeping, and Azerbaijan obviously an emerging military, recently won Karabakh War, and obviously a very significant middle power of the region. For both, it's really good. Indonesia will obviously gel in as well, and they all are Muslim countries, and they can always integrate very well. There will be a lot of problems. Obviously, there will be a lot of challenges for these peacekeeping militaries, or because it's just not the war zone. It is a very complicated war zone. It has 500 kilometers of the tunnels, and it has a lot of high risk, places. The streets are prone to all kind of accidents and bombings and all that. So it would be very hard for them to go on. But obviously they have to change the strategy. They have to keep drones in contact a lot. They have to change their military tactics to the level which was never been done before. They have to go modern military tactics and all that. So yes, Azerbaijan and Pakistan and Indonesia, they can do well, but obviously with a lot of challenges as well.
Sharaz, thank you kindly for joining us and sharing your thoughts and opinions.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
In other news, Ankara aims to reach $40 billion in trade volume with Africa this year, the Turkish trade minister said at the opening of the 5th Turkey-Africa Business and Economic Forum in Istanbul. The two-day forum will see some 4,000 business leaders, investors, and policymakers from across the African continent meet their Turkish counterparts. Turkish investments in Africa have surpassed $10 billion, while contractors from Turkey have completed more than 2,000 projects on the continent, from airports and roads to hospitals and housing. The second day of the third Azerbaijan National Urban Forum in Hankendi focused on bridging urban-rural divides and improving access to affordable housing. Azerbaijani, Turkish, and Chinese officials shared their own experiences in making quality housing accessible. Our Sabina Abubakirova has more.
Today is the second day of the third Azerbaijan National Urban Forum in Hankendi, with discussions centered on key themes of building sustainable and inclusive cities. The program included 6 thematic panel sessions focused on practical solutions for urban development.
The fact that this forum is being held in Hankendi, on the ancient lands of Karabakh, is a very significant event. Next year, one of the world's most prestigious gatherings, the World Urban Forum, will be hosted in Azerbaijan. This reflects our country's extensive experience in urban development and its growing international standing in this field.
The tool to take the next slide.
The day began with discussion on urban-rural linkages, exploring how balanced development can support social and economic growth. Speakers included Nigar Arpadarai, Member of Parliament and COP29 high-level champion, and Katya Schaefer, Inter-Regional Advisor on UN Habitat. Housing affordability was another key topic. Officials from Turkey, China and Azerbaijan shared their country's experience in making quality housing accessible through innovative finance mechanisms and public-private partnerships.
Later discussions turned to mobility, data and urban health, from smarter transport planning to designing cities that support people's well-being, safety and inclusivity.
Azerbaijan itself, we know that Azerbaijan as the country has its own policy and program to develop the smart city initiatives. That just itself hosting the urban forum tells you a lot. And we know that Baku is also considered as one of the smartest cities in the region. The government investing lots of money to develop and implement smart city solutions.
In Azerbaijan, this got really pioneering work when it comes to urban reconstruction, and they did not only leave it by that, but they initiated an urban transformation process that is nationwide with a new urban agenda together with UN Habitat. So I think this is really an amazing experience for Azerbaijan, but for us as experts as well.
We are heading into a climate vulnerable future, and we need to pay attention to renewable energy and green infrastructures and so on if we have to have a future that is resilient and one that is equitable for everybody, because ultimately the communities that get impacted the worst by issues around climate change are the poorest communities, the most vulnerable communities. And so if we don't start to develop infrastructure, and that includes cities that are green.
Tomorrow, the forum continues in Baku, where sessions will focus on climate resilience and innovation in urban development. Sabina Abubekirova, A News.
Over in Georgia, the scheduled meeting of the country's Prime Minister Irakli Kovahidze and the head of the OSCE and Finnish Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen was cancelled. Georgia's government claims it called off the meeting, citing Valtonen's appearance at a protest in Tbilisi during her South Caucasus tour. Our Nini Nikolaishvili reports from the Georgian capital.
Finnish Foreign Minister and OSCE chairperson in office Elina Valtonen was due to meet Georgia's Prime Minister in Tbilisi until the Georgian government called it off, accusing her of taking part in what it labeled an illegal rally. Valtonen had visited demonstrators gathered outside Parliament and briefly spoke to them, saying that she wanted to show support for freedom of speech and peaceful assembly. For the Georgian government, that amounted to crossing a red line. Officials said her actions breached Georgian law and the Vienna Convention, with the parliament speaker and ruling party MPs accusing her of siding with how they describe radicals and insulting Georgian society. The Interior Ministry later confirmed that Valtonen was fined about $1,800 for blocking the road during the protest, a move seen largely as symbolic, given that she had already left the country, but reflecting the Georgian Dream government's determination to project firmness. Valtonen rejected the accusations, saying that the cancellation was in fact decided by Finland due to scheduling changes. She insists her visit followed normal diplomatic practice and reflected the OSCE's mission to promote dialogue and rights. During her stay, Valtonen also visited the occupation line in Odzisi, reiterating the OSCE's and Finland's firm support for Georgia's sovereignty and calling on Russia to withdraw to its pre-2008 positions. But Georgian leaders saw irony in that gesture, contrasting her words on sovereignty with what they viewed as interference in domestic politics. The episode highlights widening strains between Tbilisi and its Western partners over democratic standards and civil rights, as the government faces growing protests at home and mounting criticism from abroad. To frame this in the regional theater, Valtonen's visits to Azerbaijan and Armenia were undertaken at the highest levels, with receptions by heads of state and foreign ministers. In Azerbaijan, she met President Ilham Aliyev and Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov and discussed regional peace, OSCE reform and post-conflict cooperation. In Armenia, she held talks with Prime Minister Pashinyan and Foreign Minister Mirzoyan, lauding the decision to end OSCE's Minsk group structures and pushing reconciliation initiatives. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Tajikistan has secured investment deals worth over $4 billion in its strategic sectors and its capital at the International Dushanbe Invest Forum. Our Fariza Kalimurzina has the details.
The International Investment Forum has just concluded in the capital of Tajikistan, where 52 agreements and contracts were signed, totaling more than $4 billion, a record figure for the country. Nearly $500 million of this amount is dedicated to projects related to the development of Dushanbe itself. The remaining investments are directed towards Tajikistan's strategic sectors, including industry, energy, agriculture, transport infrastructure, and tourism. Representatives from foreign governments, international financial institutions, and business leaders from various countries attended the event. Key discussions focused on improving the investment climate and attracting direct foreign investment. A key highlight of the forum was the announcement that Tajikistan aims to become the first country in the CIS to develop lithium production, a crucial component for electric vehicle batteries. Sherali Kabir, Minister of Industry and New Technologies, also pointed out that Tajikistan holds reserves of 10 out of 12 metals critical for the global green transition, 6 of which are already produced domestically. He emphasized the country's intention to actively engage in new supply chains for rare earth metals. Participating in the forum, the deputy mayor of Dushanbe noted that foreign investment in the city reached $2.2 billion in the first half of this year. The capital is actively expanding its international ties, cooperating with 69 countries. This global engagement supports Dushanbe's strong economic growth, with the city's economy expanding at an average rate of 7.3% annually and consistently contributing around 20% to the country's national GDP. The forum also highlighted the importance of 4 major transport corridors crossing Tajikistan, which connect the country's markets with neighboring countries in the wider region, boosting foreign trade to Nova. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, E-News.
Afghanistan's foreign minister has wrapped up his week-long visit to India, a trip seen as both a diplomatic milestone and a geopolitical balancing act amid tensions with Pakistan. Our Tamim Bahis brings more from Kabul.
The 7-day visit saw the Afghan foreign minister meeting Indian officials, business leaders and members of the Hindu and Sikh communities. Diplomatically, the visit achieved some major breakthroughs. India agreed to reopen its embassy in Kabul and upgrade its mission, a move widely seen as a step toward normalization with the Taliban government. The two sides also pledged to expand trade, boost Afghan exports like dry fruits, and make it easier for Afghans to travel to India for medical treatment. New Delhi also promised deeper cooperation in education, health, and development, further enhancing the Taliban's international legitimacy. But even as the Afghan delegation was in India, tensions with Pakistan flared dramatically. For days, Pakistan and Afghanistan exchanged heavy border fire amid reports of airstrikes. By Wednesday evening, both sides confirmed a ceasefire at 5:30 p.m. local time. A Taliban spokesperson said the truce came at Pakistan's request, while Islamabad called for constructive discussions to ease tensions. The UN has urged both nations to protect civilians after reports of casualties. Analysts say Pakistan's long-standing rivalry with India could complicate Kabul's new outreach to New Delhi. For now, though, Afghanistan is celebrating what it calls a successful diplomatic breakthrough, even as the guns fall silent, at least temporarily, on its southern border. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A-News.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned to A News.